The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the dusty mercantile, and Olivia Kane pressed her trembling hand against her swollen belly. Wondering if the man waiting for her would turn her away once, he saw what she carried beneath her traveling dress. Ruby City, Nevada Territory, looked exactly as desperate as she felt in the blazing afternoon heat of July 1867. The main street stretched before her like a judgment, lined with weathered buildings that seemed to lean into each other for support. Men in dusty work clothes and women in faded calico moved about their business, and somewhere in this rough mining town stood the man who had sent for a bride through correspondence, but knew nothing of her shame. The driver opened the door and offered his calloused hand. Olivia took it, careful to keep her shawl draped over her middle despite the oppressive heat. Her legs shook as her boots touched the packed earth, and she scanned the faces of the few people who had paused to watch the stage's arrival. "Miss Kane," a voice rumbled behind her, deep and uncertain. She turned and found herself looking up at a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of good whiskey. He held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously, and even through her fear, she noticed the kindness in his face. This was Marcus Jensen, the cowboy whose letters had been her only hope when her world had shattered 4 months ago. "Mr. Jensen," she managed, her throat tight. "Yes, I am Olivia Kane." He smiled then, a genuine expression that reached those warm eyes and made the corners crinkle. "Been looking forward to meeting you proper. Your letters, they painted such a picture of who you are." He gestured toward where a wagon waited. "Let me get your trunk." Olivia watched him lift her battered trunk as though it weighed nothing, his broad shoulders straining against his worn cotton shirt. He was perhaps 25 or 26, only a few years older than her own 22 years. In his letters, he had told her about his ranch 10 miles outside of Ruby City, about the cattle he raised and the land he was trying to tame. He had been honest about the hardship, about the loneliness, about wanting a partner to build something with. She had lied to him with every word she had not written. The ride to his ranch passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by his occasional comments about the landscape. Olivia kept her shawl wrapped tight despite the perspiration sliding down her back. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, dotted with sagebrush and the occasional twisted juniper. Mountains rose in the purple distance, and she wondered if a person could disappear into all that emptiness. "That is my land starting at that fence post," Marcus finally said, pointing. Pride colored his voice. 200 acres, not much by some standards, but it is mine. Worked 3 years as a ranch hand before I could afford it. It looks like good land," Olivia offered, though in truth, she knew nothing about judging such things. His ranch house came into view as they crested a small rise. It was modest but sturdy, built from rough-hewn timber with a wide porch that faced east. A barn stood nearby, and she could see cattle grazing in a fenced pasture beyond. It looked like the kind of place where a person could start over, could build a life, if only she deserved it. Marcus helped her down from the wagon with surprising gentleness for such a large man. His hands were rough but warm, and he held her elbow just a moment longer than necessary, as though afraid she might blow away in the dry wind that constantly swept across the high desert. "I know it is not much," he said, suddenly sounding younger, more uncertain, "but the house is solid. I built it myself 2 years back, and I have been fixing it up since I knew you were coming, made sure everything was just right." The house was clean inside, almost painfully so. Fresh curtains hung at the windows, and she could smell lye soap and lemon oil. A simple table sat near the stone fireplace, 2 chairs positioned across from each other. Along one wall stood a bed frame with what looked like a new quilt spread across it. Everything spoke of a man who had tried to make things welcoming, who had anticipated her arrival with hope. Guilt crashed over Olivia like a wave. She pressed one hand to her mouth and felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I know it is plain," Marcus said quickly, misreading her emotion. "But we can make it better. I have been saving, and come fall after I sell the cattle, we can get nicer things. Whatever you want." "It is perfect," Olivia whispered, and then the tears came despite her efforts to hold them back. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, clearly at a loss. Then he carefully set down the trunk and took a hesitant step toward her. "Miss Kane, Olivia, what is wrong? If you do not like it, we can change things. Or if you have changed your mind about marrying me, I understand. I will take you back to town, help you get passage back to Missouri." "You do not understand," she choked out. "You should not want to marry me. I have deceived you." He waited, and something in his stillness gave her the courage to continue. Olivia let the shawl fall away. Her dress was loose, meant to conceal, but she pressed her hand against the unmistakable swell of her belly and watched his face. Marcus stared for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at her face, into her eyes. "How far along?" "Nearly 6 months." Her voice cracked. "I should have told you in the letters, but I was desperate. My father threw me out when he discovered my condition. The man who did this, he was a banker's son, and he laughed when I told him. Said I was nothing, that no one would believe me over him. I had nowhere to go, no money, no family who would take me in. When I saw your advertisement for a bride, I thought maybe, out here where no one knew me, I could start fresh. But that was wrong of me. You deserve to know the truth." The silence stretched so long she thought she might shatter. Then Marcus picked up her shawl and gently draped it back around her shoulders. "Cold wind coming in tonight," he said quietly. "You will want to keep warm." She stared at him. "Did you hear what I said?" "I heard." He moved to the fireplace and began building a fire with careful, methodical movements. "You must be hungry after the journey. I have stew from yesterday. It will warm up quick, Mr. Jensen." Her voice rose. "I am carrying another man's child, a child conceived in shame. How can you stand there and talk about stew?" He turned to face her then, and the expression on his weathered face made her breath catch. There was no anger there, no disgust. Instead, she saw something that looked almost like understanding, tinged with an old sadness. "My mother carried me out of wedlock," he said simply. "My father was a married man who wanted nothing to do with us. She worked herself to death in a laundry trying to provide for me, and every day of her life, people made sure she remembered her shame. She died when I was 12, and I think part of what killed her was carrying that weight for so long." Marcus crossed the room until he stood directly in front of her. He was so tall she had to tilt her head back to see his face. "Shame has no place in our home," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Do you hear me, Olivia? Whatever happened to you back in Missouri, it stays there. That child you are carrying, it will be ours, mine and yours. No shame, no judgment, no looking back. We start fresh from this moment." "But people will know," she whispered. "They will count the months." "Let them count." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she did not, he gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "This is my land, my home. Anyone who has a problem with my wife or my child will answer to me." The word wife hung in the air between them. "I do not expect anything from you right away," Marcus continued. "We can get married in town tomorrow if you are willing, just for the legality of things, for your protection and the baby's. But beyond that, I will not rush you. You can have time to settle in, to feel safe. This marriage, it will be whatever we make it. No pressure, no expectations beyond basic respect and honesty." Olivia searched his face, looking for any hint of ulterior motive, any shadow of the cruelty she had learned men were capable of. She found only sincerity and a quiet strength that made something tight in her chest begin to loosen. "Why would you do this?" she asked. "You could send me back, find another bride, one without complications." He smiled then, soft and a little sad. "Maybe because I know what it is like to be judged for circumstances beyond your control. Maybe because your letters showed me a woman with courage and kindness, and those things do not change based on what has happened to you. Or maybe because I have been lonely long enough to know that second chances are rare and precious." She wanted to believe him. Lord, how she wanted to believe that this tall, gentle cowboy meant every word he said. "I will work hard," she said, her voice strengthening. "I will be a good wife, a good partner. I can cook and clean and tend animals. I will earn my place here." "You already have a place here," Marcus said. "You had it from the moment you stepped off that stage." They were married the next day at the small church in Ruby City, with the minister's wife and the general store owner serving as witnesses. Olivia wore her best dress, the blue one with the lace collar that she had carefully preserved for this occasion. Marcus wore a clean shirt and vest, his dark hair slicked back with water, and when he said his vows, he looked directly into her eyes with a steadiness that made her feel, for the first time in months, like she was not falling. The minister, an older man with kind eyes, blessed their union and did not ask questions about the bride's figure. His wife pressed a bouquet of wild desert flowers into Olivia's hands and whispered, "May God grant you happiness, dear." They ate a wedding supper at the ranch, simple but good, with roasted chicken Marcus had prepared and potatoes from the root cellar. The conversation came easier now, small exchanges about daily life and the rhythms of the ranch. "The mornings are busy," Marcus explained. "Cattle need checking, fences need mending, but I will teach you the routines if you want to learn, or if you prefer to focus on the house, that is fine too. We will find what works." "I want to learn," Olivia said. "About all of it. I do not want to be helpless." He smiled at that. "Something tells me you have never been helpless in your life. Scared maybe, but not helpless. There is a difference." As the sun set and painted the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Marcus showed her where everything was kept, how to work the stove, where the well stood. He had given her the bedroom, he explained, while he would sleep in the barn until she felt comfortable with other arrangements. "That does not seem right," Olivia protested. "This is your home. I cannot make you sleep in the barn." "It is summer," he said practically. "The barn is perfectly comfortable. Besides, you need rest, especially in your condition. The bed is yours." But Olivia shook her head. "We are married now. We will figure out how to make this work together, but I will not start by pushing you out of your own house. The bed is large enough that we can share it respectfully, with space between us." Something flickered in his eyes, respect maybe, or gratitude. "If you are sure, I am sure." That night they lay on opposite sides of the bed, a careful distance between them in the darkness. Olivia could hear his steady breathing, could feel the warmth that radiated from his large frame. It should have felt awkward or frightening, but instead she felt safer than she had in months. "Marcus," she whispered into the darkness. "Yes, thank you for everything, for giving me a chance." A pause, then his voice, low and warm. "Get some sleep, Olivia. Tomorrow we start building our life." The days that followed fell into a pattern that was both challenging and comforting. Marcus rose before dawn to tend the cattle, and Olivia learned to wake with him, making coffee and breakfast in the pre-dawn darkness. He was patient as he taught her about the ranch, showing her how to recognize signs of illness in the cattle, how to check fence lines, how to read the weather in the way the wind shifted. Her belly grew steadily, and while the work was sometimes tiring, Olivia found herself stronger than she had been in Missouri. The desert air, though harsh, seemed to breathe life into her. And Marcus, true to his word, treated her with unfailing kindness and respect. They talked in the evenings, sharing stories of their lives. She told him about growing up in Kansas City, about her mother who had died when she was young and her father who had become increasingly strict and religious as he aged. He told her about drifting after his mother's death, working ranches across Colorado and Nevada, learning everything he could until he had saved enough to claim his own piece of land. I always thought if I could just have my own place, build something solid and real, then maybe I would not feel so much like I was floating, Marcus said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge. And it helped, having the ranch, but it was still lonely. A house is not a home when there is no one to share it with. Olivia reached over and took his hand, surprising both of them. His fingers closed around hers, rough and warm and steady. "It is becoming a home," she said softly. He smiled at her in the starlight. "Yes, it is." In early September, when the heat of summer was finally beginning to break, Olivia woke in the middle of the night with a sharp pain lancing through her abdomen. She gasped and pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the tightness there. Marcus woke instantly. "What is wrong?" "The baby," she managed. "I think it is coming." He was out of bed in an instant, pulling on his pants and boots. "It is too early. You said you had another month." "Babies come when they want to come," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice calm though fear clawed at her throat. "You need to get the doctor from town." Marcus hesitated, clearly torn between staying with her and following her instruction. "I cannot leave you alone. You have to. I need the doctor." Another contraction hit and she gritted her teeth through it. "Go, I will be fine until you return." He moved with swift efficiency then, pressing a kiss to her forehead before racing out. She heard his horse thunder away into the night, and then she was alone with the pain and the fear. Olivia had attended births before, had helped her neighbors in Kansas City. She knew what was supposed to happen, but knowing and experiencing were vastly different things. She tried to prepare, laying out clean linens and towels, boiling water, doing everything she could remember while the contractions grew stronger and closer together. It felt like hours before she heard horses approaching. Marcus burst through the door with an older woman close behind him. "Doctor is out at a mining accident," Marcus said, his face tight with worry. "But I brought Mrs. Patterson. She has delivered more babies than anyone in Ruby City." Mrs. Patterson was a sturdy woman with iron-gray hair and capable hands. She took one look at Olivia and immediately took charge. "Mr. Jensen, I need more hot water and those clean towels. Miss Olivia, let us get you more comfortable." Marcus hovered nearby, looking helpless and afraid in a way Olivia had never seen him. "What can I do?" "You can stay close," Olivia gasped, reaching for him. "I need you here." He took her hand and she clung to it through the waves of pain that crashed over her. Mrs. Patterson worked efficiently, checking Olivia's progress and offering encouragement in a no-nonsense voice. "Baby is coming fast," she announced. "First ones sometimes do. You are doing good, honey. Just keep breathing through it." The labor was hard and frightening, made worse by the knowledge that it was early, that something could be wrong. Olivia screamed and sweated and held onto Marcus's hand so tightly she was sure she must be hurting him, but he never pulled away. He stayed right beside her, wiping her face with a cool cloth, whispering encouragement, being the anchor she desperately needed. As dawn light began to filter through the windows, Mrs. Patterson said firmly, "Next push, we will have this baby." "Ready." Olivia pushed with everything she had, and suddenly there was a release of pressure and then a sound, thin and wavering but unmistakable. A baby crying. "It is a boy," Mrs. Patterson announced, working quickly to clear his airways and wrap him in a towel. "Small but breathing. That is what counts." She placed the tiny bundle in Olivia's arms, and Olivia stared down at the red, wrinkled face of her son. He was so small, his features delicate and not fully formed, but his eyes were open and searching, and his little fingers curled and uncurled against the towel. "He is perfect," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, looking at the baby with an expression of wonder. "He is so small. He will grow," Mrs. Patterson said confidently, "but he will need careful tending these first weeks. Keep him warm, make sure he eats regular. I will come by every few days to check on him." Over the next hours, Mrs. Patterson taught them both how to care for the tiny infant, how to help him nurse, how to support his fragile head, how to watch for signs of distress. Marcus paid attention to every word, asking questions and taking it all seriously. When Mrs. Patterson finally left with promises to return in 2 days, Marcus and Olivia were alone with their son. They sat together on the bed, the baby sleeping between them, and looked at each other over his small form. "What should we name him?" Marcus asked softly. Olivia had thought about this during her pregnancy, had considered names from her family, but none of them felt right now. Those people had turned their backs on her. This was her new family, and the name should reflect that. "What was your mother's maiden name?" she asked. "Garrett." "Then let us name him Daniel Garrett Jensen," Olivia said. "After your mother's family and with your name, because he is ours." "Yours and mine." Marcus's eyes shone suspiciously bright in the morning light. "Daniel Garrett Jensen," he repeated. "It is a strong name, a good name." He reached out and carefully, so carefully, touched one finger to the baby's tiny hand. Daniel's fingers immediately closed around it, gripping with surprising strength. "He is holding on to me," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. "He knows his father," Olivia said, and in that moment she knew it was true. The weeks that followed were exhausting and beautiful in equal measure. Daniel was a fussy baby, waking frequently to eat, and both Olivia and Marcus spent many long nights walking the floor with him. But Marcus never complained. He would take the baby when Olivia was too tired, would hold him against his broad chest and walk the length of the house, humming tuneless songs until Daniel settled. Olivia watched them together during those late-night vigils, seeing how carefully Marcus supported the tiny head, how he would talk to Daniel in a low, soothing voice, telling him about the ranch and the cattle and all the things they would do together when he was older. And her heart, which had been so broken and wary, began to open. Marcus Jensen was not the man who had hurt her. He was nothing like that cruel banker's son who had taken what he wanted and discarded her. Marcus was steady and kind and true to his word. He loved Daniel with a fierceness that took her breath away, never once treating him as anything other than his own son. And slowly, gradually, Olivia realized that what she felt for her husband was growing into something far deeper than gratitude or respect. One evening in late October, when Daniel was finally sleeping soundly in the cradle Marcus had built for him, Olivia found herself studying her husband as he sat by the fire, mending a bridle. The firelight played across his strong features, highlighting the curve of his jaw and the concentration in his eyes. "Marcus," she said softly. He looked up, and something in her expression made him set aside his work. "What is it?" She stood and crossed to him, and before she could lose her nerve, she settled onto his lap, her arms going around his neck. He froze, surprised, his hands hovering uncertainly near her waist. "Olivia, I want to be your wife," she said, looking directly into his eyes. "Truly your wife." In all ways. His hands finally settled on her waist, gentle but sure. "Are you certain? I told you there was no pressure. I meant that. I am certain." She touched his face, traced the line of his jaw with her fingers. "You have given me everything. Safety, respect, love for my son." You have shown me what a good man is, and I want to give you what you deserve. I want us to be a real family in every sense." "We already are a real family," he said, his voice rough. "But Olivia, if this is what you want, if you are truly ready, then yes. I want that too. I have wanted it for a while now, but I was willing to wait forever if that was what you needed." She kissed him then, soft and tentative at first, then with growing confidence as he responded. His arms came around her, careful of her still healing body, and he kissed her back with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. That night, they became husband and wife in truth, and it was nothing like what Olivia had experienced before. Marcus was patient and gentle, constantly checking that she was comfortable, that she was truly willing. There was no taking, only giving and receiving, a conversation conducted in touches and sighs and whispered words of affection. Afterwards, lying in his arms with her head on his chest and Daniel sleeping peacefully nearby, Olivia felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt whole. She felt cherished. She felt loved. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness, the words coming easier than she had expected. His arms tightened around her. "I love you too. Have for a while now, I think. Maybe from the first moment you stepped off that stage, looking so scared and brave at the same time. Even knowing what I carried, especially knowing. Because it took courage to come here, to trust a stranger with your future. I have never known anyone braver than you, Olivia Jensen." Winter came to the high desert, and with it, a beauty Olivia had not expected. Snow fell in soft curtains, transforming the harsh landscape into something magical. The ranch work continued, harder now with the cold, but they managed it together. Marcus taught Olivia to ride properly, and soon she was helping him check the herd even in the cold. Daniel grew steadily, losing his fragile newborn appearance and becoming a sturdy, alert baby. He would watch them with serious dark eyes and had started smiling in December, a gummy grin that melted both his parents' hearts. On Christmas morning, Marcus gave Olivia a necklace he had ordered from a jeweler in Virginia City, a delicate silver chain with a small pendant. Inside the pendant was a tiny photograph, one he had commissioned of the three of them from a photographer who had passed through Ruby City. "So you always remember," Marcus said as he fastened it around her neck. "The day we became a family." Olivia gave him a heavy wool coat she had sewn herself, working on it in secret during the evenings. "So you stay warm when you are out with the cattle." They kissed under the sprig of pine Marcus had hung over the doorway, and Daniel gurgled happily from his cradle, as though pleased with his parents' display of affection. In February, Mrs. Patterson came by for one of her regular visits. She had become a friend as much as a helper, often staying for coffee and conversation. On this visit, after checking on Daniel and pronouncing him thriving, she turned to Olivia with a knowing look. "You are pregnant again," she said bluntly. Olivia blinked in surprise. "I think it is too early to know. I have seen enough pregnant women to know the signs. You have that look about you. When was your last course?" Olivia thought back and felt her eyes widen. "It has been longer than usual. I thought it was just from nursing Daniel." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "That too, but there is more going on. I would wager you will have another baby by autumn." Marcus, who had been listening from across the room, looked stunned and then slowly began to smile. "Another baby, if Mrs. Patterson says it, it must be true," Olivia said, still trying to process the news. "She is never wrong." He crossed the room and pulled her into a careful embrace. "How do you feel about it?" Surprised, a little scared, but also happy, Olivia admitted. "Is that strange? They will be so close in age." "Irish twins," Mrs. Patterson said cheerfully. "You will have your hands full, but that is nothing new for you. You have proven yourself capable." After Mrs. Patterson left, Marcus and Olivia sat together, Daniel playing on a blanket between them. "I did not expect it to happen so quickly," Marcus said, wonder in his voice. "But I am glad. I love being a father, and Daniel will have a sibling close in age. They will grow up together. Are you not worried about having another mouth to feed so soon? The ranch is doing well. And Olivia, I want a full house. I want children and noise and life filling every corner. I want the opposite of how I grew up, alone and unwanted. I want our children to never doubt for a moment that they are loved." Tears filled her eyes. "You are going to make me cry again." "Seems like I am always making you cry lately," he teased gently, wiping her tears with his thumb. "Happy tears," she insisted. "Only happy tears now." The spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves were born and the grass greened up from the winter snow. Olivia's belly grew round again, and this time there was no shame in it, only joy. Marcus would rest his hand on her stomach in the evenings, feeling the baby kick, and talk about all the things they would do as a family. Daniel took his first steps in May, toddling from Olivia's arms to Marcus's with squeals of delight. They celebrated with applause and laughter, and Marcus swept the baby up and spun him around. "That is my boy," he said proudly, "getting strong." In June, a rider came from town with news that made Marcus's face go still and serious. He read the letter twice, then looked at Olivia. "There is trouble in Ruby City," he said carefully. "Some miners have been causing problems, getting rough with people. The sheriff is asking for men to help keep the peace." Fear clutched at Olivia's heart. "You are going?" "I should. It is the right thing to do, but I do not want to leave you, especially not with you pregnant and Daniel so young." Olivia took a breath, forcing down her fear. "How long would you be gone?" "A few days, maybe a week. Just until things settle." She did not want him to go. The thought of being without him terrified her. But she also understood duty and community, and she knew Marcus well enough to know he would regret not helping. "Go," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "We will be fine. Mrs. Patterson is only a few miles away. I can send for her if I need anything." He pulled her close, careful of her belly between them. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. But you come back to us, Marcus Jensen. You hear me? You come back safe." "Always," he promised. He left the next morning, well armed and serious. Olivia watched him ride away and felt a chill despite the warm summer morning. She kept herself busy over the next days, caring for Daniel and the animals, doing the endless work of the ranch. But every sound made her jump, and she found herself constantly looking toward the road. 5 days after he left, Marcus returned, dusty and tired but unhurt. Olivia ran to him, Daniel bouncing on her hip, and Marcus caught them both in his arms. "There were some rough moments," he admitted later after he had washed and eaten. "But no one was seriously hurt. The troublemakers have been dealt with and things should be peaceful now." "I was so worried," Olivia confessed. "I know, I was worried about you too. But we are both fine, and I am not leaving again. From now on, my place is here." In September, as the aspen trees turned gold in the distant mountains, Olivia went into labor again. This birth was easier than Daniel's, perhaps because the baby was full term and Olivia knew what to expect. Marcus stayed beside her the entire time, and when their daughter was born, strong and healthy and wailing with impressive volume, they both cried with relief and joy. "She has your spirit already," Marcus said, marveling at the baby's furious red face. "Listen to those lungs." They named her Emma Rose Jensen, and she was as different from Daniel as could be. Where he had been quiet and watchful, Emma was loud and demanding. She knew what she wanted and was not shy about making her needs known. "We are going to have our hands full with this one," Olivia said, exhausted but smiling as she nursed her daughter while Daniel napped nearby. Marcus looked at his family, his wife and 2 children, and felt a contentment so profound, it was almost painful. "I never imagined I could have this," he said softly. "A wife I love, children, a home that feels complete." "Neither did I," Olivia admitted. "When I stepped off that stage, I was so afraid. I thought I would spend the rest of my life paying for my mistakes. But you showed me that the past does not have to define the future. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Marcus corrected. "You brought life and love into my home. You made me believe I could be more than just my mother's bastard son. You made me a husband and a father, and those are the things I am most proud of." The years that followed were not always easy. Ranching was hard work, and there were droughts and hard winters and times when money was tight. But they faced everything together, as partners in the truest sense. The ranch grew, and so did their family. 3 years after Emma was born, they welcomed twin boys, Samuel and Thomas, and 2 years after that, another daughter, Catherine. Their home was always full of noise and life. Children running through the house, playing in the barn, helping with the chores as soon as they were old enough. Marcus taught them all to ride, to work with cattle, to respect the land. Olivia taught them to read and write, to cook and sew, to value kindness and honesty. Daniel grew tall and serious, much like Marcus, with a gift for working with animals. Emma was fierce and protective of her siblings, always ready to defend them. The twins were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and getting into mischief together. And Catherine, the baby, was gentle and artistic, always drawing pictures of the ranch and the desert. Ruby City grew and changed around them. The mining boom eventually slowed, but the town remained, becoming more settled and civilized. The Jensens became respected members of the community. Marcus was known as a fair man, honest in his dealings, and Olivia was sought out for her advice and her skill with healing herbs. People who had known them from the beginning sometimes remarked on Daniel, noting that he must have been conceived mighty quick after the wedding. But if they said such things within Marcus's hearing, he would fix them with a steady look and say simply, "That is my son," and his tone would brook no argument. And if anyone was foolish enough to persist, Olivia would step forward, her chin raised, and remind them that shame had no place in her home, and it certainly had no place in Ruby City's gossip. Over time, even the most persistent gossips found new things to talk about, and Daniel was simply accepted as the eldest Jensen boy, no different from his siblings. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Marcus took Olivia on a ride up into the foothills, something they rarely had time for anymore with 5 children at home. Mrs. Patterson had agreed to watch the little ones, and the older children were responsible enough to help. They rode to a high meadow where wildflowers bloomed in profusion, and the view stretched for miles. Marcus spread a blanket and unpacked the lunch Olivia had prepared, and they ate in companionable silence, enjoying the rare moment of peace. "You ever regret it?" Olivia asked suddenly. "Taking me on with all my baggage and troubles?" Marcus looked at her surprised. "Never. Not for one moment. Do you regret coming here?" "No. But I wonder sometimes what your life would have been like if you had chosen a different bride, someone without complications." He reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I do not wonder. I know it would have been a lesser life. You brought me everything that matters. Yes, there were challenges, but Olivia, you gave me a family. You gave me love. You made me believe I was worth something more than my past. You always were worth more," she said fiercely. "Your mother's circumstances, my circumstances, none of that defined our worth. I know that now, because you taught me." He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "These 10 years have been the best of my life, and I look forward to 50 more with you." 50 more, she agreed, smiling. At least. They sat together watching the sun move across the sky, and Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the frightened young woman who had stepped off the stage in Ruby City, carrying a child and a burden of shame. She thought about the cowboy who had looked at her with kind eyes and said that shame had no place in their home. He had been right. There was no shame here in this meadow, no shame in their home, no shame in the life they had built together. There was only love, hard-won and precious, growing stronger with each passing year. When they returned to the ranch that evening, they found their children had prepared a surprise. The table was set with their best dishes, and Daniel and Emma had managed to cook a meal with only minor disasters. The twins had picked wildflowers and arranged them in jars, and Catherine had drawn a picture of their whole family to hang on the wall. "Happy anniversary," Daniel said, grinning. At 13, he was already showing signs of the man he would become, tall and broad-shouldered like his father. Emma hugged them both fiercely. "We wanted to do something special for you." Marcus pulled all the children into a group embrace, and Olivia found herself in the middle of a tangle of arms and laughter, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was her life. This loud, chaotic, beautiful life. This family that loved without conditions, without judgment, without reservation. After dinner, after the children were finally settled in bed, Marcus and Olivia stood on their porch watching the stars emerge. It was their favorite time of day, these quiet moments when they could simply be together. "I have been thinking," Marcus said slowly. "The ranch is doing well enough now that we could expand, maybe hire some help, take some of the burden off." "Are you sure? Hiring help means trusting someone else with what we have built, I am sure, and I am not getting any younger. I want to have time to enjoy our children while they are still young, to take you on more rides into the hills, to just live, not just work." Olivia smiled. "I would like that, though I suspect it will not be long before Daniel is managing most of the ranch work anyway. He has taken to it like he was born to it." "He was born to it," Marcus said. "Born to this land, this life, same as all our children." He paused. "Same as we were, I think. We just had to find our way here first." "I found my way to you," Olivia corrected, "and that made all the difference." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges and joys in equal measure. Daniel married a schoolteacher from Virginia City when he was 23, and they settled on a piece of land adjacent to the main ranch. Emma proved to have a head for business and began helping Marcus with the financial side of the operation. The twins joined the army for a few years, seeing something of the world before returning to help run the ranch. And Catherine married a surveyor and moved to Carson City, though she visited often with her growing family. Marcus and Olivia grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces weathering like the landscape they loved. But their love remained constant, deepening with each passing year until it was as much a part of them as breathing. They became grandparents and then great-grandparents, their home always open to the expanding family. And whenever a young couple faced judgment or trouble, whenever someone was dealing with shame or hardship, Marcus and Olivia were there to offer help and understanding. "Shame has no place here," Marcus would say, the words as true at 70 as they had been at 25. "We all deserve second chances. We all deserve to be loved." On a warm summer evening when Marcus was 76 and Olivia 73, they sat together on their porch as they had done for decades. The ranch spread before them, prosperous and well tended by their children and grandchildren. From inside the house came the sound of great-grandchildren laughing and playing. "Did you ever imagine this?" Olivia asked, her hand clasped in his. "When you sent that advertisement for a mail-order bride," Marcus smiled. I imagined a partner, maybe some children, a less lonely life. But this, a legacy that will continue for generations. A love that has sustained me for over 50 years. No, I did not imagine this. This exceeded my wildest dreams. Mine too, Olivia said softly. I thought I was coming here to hide from my shame. Instead, I found a man who taught me I had nothing to be ashamed of. You saved me, Marcus Jensen. No, he said firmly, the same strength in his voice that had been there the first time he had told her shame had no place in their home. You saved yourself. You had the courage to come here, to trust me, to build this life. I just gave you the space to become who you were always meant to be. Then we saved each other, Olivia compromised. Yes, Marcus agreed, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. We saved each other. And what a beautiful life we have built from that salvation. As the sun set over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Marcus and Olivia sat together in the home they had built with love and determination. Around them, their family laughed and loved and lived, the legacy of two people who had found each other when they both needed it most. The mail-order bride who had arrived carrying shame had instead found acceptance. The lonely cowboy seeking a partner had found a soulmate. And together, they had created something that would endure long after they were gone. A home where shame truly had no place, where love was given freely, where second chances blossomed into lifetimes of happiness. A home built on the foundation of two simple truths: that everyone deserves to be loved, and that the past does not have to define the future. It was a legacy worth leaving. And as Marcus and Olivia held hands in the gathering dusk, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived, they both knew that no matter what challenges they had faced, no matter what hardships they had endured, it had all been worth it. For this moment, for this family, for this enduring love that had transformed them both, Marcus Jensen passed peacefully in his sleep. 2 years later, Olivia beside him, their hands still clasped together as they had been every night for over half a century. He was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, and Olivia made sure that his headstone read, "Beloved husband, father, grandfather, he taught us that shame has no place where love dwells." Olivia lived another 5 years, spending her days surrounded by family, telling stories of the early days to wide-eyed great-great-grandchildren. She spoke often of Marcus, of his kindness and strength, of the day he had looked at a frightened young woman and offered her not judgment but acceptance. When her own time came, she was laid to rest beside Marcus, their graves side by side on that hill. Her headstone read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she found courage in love." The ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, each new generation learning the story of how it all began. Of a cowboy seeking a partner and a woman seeking refuge. Of a mail-order bride who arrived carrying shame, and a man who declared that shame would have no place in their home. It became a family legend, told and retold, the love story that founded a dynasty. And in Ruby City, Nevada, where the desert wind still blows and the mountains still rise purple in the distance, the Jensen name is still spoken with respect and affection, because some love stories are so powerful, so true, so foundational that they echo through generations. And the love between Marcus Jensen and Olivia Kane Jensen was exactly that kind of love. The kind that transforms lives, creates families, and builds legacies that endure. The kind of love that proves once and for all that shame truly has no place where love dwells, and that second chances, when grasped with courage and nurtured with care, can blossom into forever. And so the story ends where all the best love stories do, with a love that conquered all obstacles, a family that thrived through generations, and the absolute certainty that what Marcus and Olivia built together was worth every hardship, every challenge, every moment of doubt. They found each other when both needed saving, and together they created a home where love ruled supreme, where the past was forgiven, and where shame truly had no place at all.